Rain fell hard on the steel streets of Deltanine Station. It didn't wash away the dirt, the smell, or the pain. It only made the cold worse. And deep in one of the alleys where no one looked twice, two alien girls sat close together, trying to stay warm. They had no names that anyone cared to learn, but they had each other. The older one, Lyra, wrapped her thin arms around the younger Noxie, who trembled with hunger and fear. Their clothes were nothing but torn scraps, their feet bare. And bruised, they hadn't eaten for 2 days. They hadn't spoken to anyone for 3. And they had stopped crying long ago. The alley was a dead place. No security bots came here. No traders, no patrols, just shadows and leaking pipes. Once. This had been part of the workers' wing now. It was a graveyard for forgotten things. And forgotten people. Then the sound of footsteps came. Slow and steady, Lyra's ears twitched, and she tightened her grip on Noxie. Someone was coming. She braced for another thug, another angry face, another boot to the side. But what came instead was a quiet voice. "Are you both cold?" Lyra blinked. Standing there in the rain was a tall human man, wearing a soaked coat and a backpack. His hair was messy, his boots worn. But his eyes were kind. Noxie buried her face in Lyra's chest, shaking her head. The man knelt down slowly. As if not to scare them, he took off his coat and held it out. "Here, take this," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm." Lyra didn't move. She had learned that kindness always came with a price. She had seen other girls smile at offers to be dragged away screaming, but the man didn't reach for them. He just placed the coat on the wet ground and stood back. Then he took something from his packer-wrapped protein bar and set it beside the coat. He said, "I won't hurt you," and turned to walk away. That made Lyra speak. Her voice dry and cracked. "Why?" The man paused. He looked back over his shoulder and said, "Because no one else will," and then he walked away, his steps vanishing into the rain. Lyra stared at the food and the coat. Noxie peeked up and whispered, "Is it a trick?" Lyra didn't answer. Her stomach growled, and her arms were numb from cold. She waited 5 minutes, 10. No one came back. Finally, she crawled forward and picked up the food. She sniffed. It was real. They split it slowly, savoring every bite. Then Lyra wrapped Noxie in the coat and held her close for the first time in days. Her sister stopped shaking. The next day, the man returned. He brought more food, clean water, and another coat. Smiled, said nothing, and again turned to leave. This time, Lyra called out, "Wait." He turned, and she stood up slowly, holding Noxie's hand. "Where are you going?" She asked. "Back home," he said. "I live not far from here." He looked at them both, then added, "You can come if you want." The words hit her like a hammer. "Come, go with him." Noxie tugged her hand, scared. But Lyra looked into the man's eyes and saw no hunger, no lies, no danger, just quiet, tired kindness. She nodded slowly. The man didn't smile like a winner. He just said, "Okay," and turned to lead the way. They walked through the wet alleys and down a broken stairwell, past a sealed tunnel and into an old bunker, half buried. Beneath the ruins inside, there was light, heat, even a small cooking stove. It was more than the girls had ever known. The man gestured toward a dry corner, where blankets were folded. "You can sleep there," he said. "I'll make soup." Lyra couldn't speak. Noxie cried. But they were quiet tears, not of fear, but of something strange, something like hope. Later, as they curled under the blankets, full for the first time in months, Noxie whispered, "Do you think he'll keep us?" Lyra didn't know, but she looked at the man sleeping on the floor near the door. No chains, no locks, no threats. And for the first time in her short, broken life, she whispered back, "I think he already did." The shelter was warmer than anything the girls had known, not because of fire or heating coils, but because it felt real. It had walls that didn't leak, a door that locked from the inside, and blankets that didn't smell like rot for Lyra and Noxie. It felt like a dream they were afraid to wake from. Carson, the human who brought them, didn't ask questions. He didn't stare or treat them like pets. He simply gave them space, food, and time. Each day, he would bring back a little more. Extra cans, new batteries, a heating pad he fixed with old wire. He worked with tools in silence while the girls sat quietly nearby, watching, unsure. Lyra was the first to speak. Why? Do you live here, under the station? Carson looked up from his toolbox and wiped his hands. "'Cause I got tired of pretending," he said. "The surface is loud, fake. Full of people who walk over others." He gave a small smile. "Down here. At least I know what's real." Noxie watched him carefully. She still didn't trust him. Every good thing in her life had turned bad. Every kind face had hidden sharp teeth, but Carson never touched them, never yelled, never made demands. He gave them both their own blankets, a corner to sleep in, and even found a second toothbrush. It was strange and almost too easy to believe. So they didn't believe it, not yet. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stared at the cracked ceiling, wondering what would happen if they stayed, or worse. They left. She turned to Noxie and whispered, "Do you think we're safe here?" Noxie shook her head, eyes wide in the dark. "No one gives something for nothing." She said, "He's waiting. I know it." But days passed, and still, Carson never changed. He taught Lyra how to use the cooking stove. He showed Noxie how to clean a power cell. He even let them pick music from his old datapad, a dusty, cracked thing with only 5 songs. It was the first time Noxie smiled, even just a little. She liked the music, the rhythm, the strange old human words she couldn't understand. Carson smiled too, just watching them be children. Then came the knock. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was hard, sharp, full of anger. 3 loud bangs on the steel door. Carson stood up slowly, motioned for the girls to stay hidden. He walked to the door and opened a small peephole. Outside were 3 aliens, rough clothes, sharp eyes, and scanners in hand. "Human," one of them growled. "We're looking for 2 escaped assets, females, young property of KTOR Holdings." He held up a screen showing sketches. The faces were too close to be coincidence. Lyra and Noxie. "I haven't seen anyone like that," he said calmly. "I live alone. Check the registry." One of the aliens sniffed. "We will." They scanned the door frame, the walls, even the floor near the entrance, but they didn't find the girls. Carson had hidden them in a small compartment behind the heating unit. Dark, tight, but safe. The aliens eventually left, muttering threats. Carson waited until their footsteps faded, then opened the compartment and let the girls out. Noxie was shaking, her hands tight, fists. Lyra looked ready to run, but Carson only sighed and said, "They'll be back, and next time they'll bring more than scanners." Lyra whispered, "What do we do?" Carson stared at them both for a long moment. Then he knelt and opened a hidden floor panel. Inside was a crate, dusty, locked, heavy. He opened it, revealing gear that hadn't seen light in years. Old rebel armor, a training pistol, 2 knives, and a patch that read Unity Cores. "You learn," he said quietly. "If you stay here, you learn to fight. Hide, survive." He looked at Lyra, then Noxie. "I can protect you, but only if you help protect yourselves." Lyra stepped forward first, not because she was brave, but because she was tired of being helpless. She picked up the training pistol, held it awkwardly. Carson nodded. "We start tomorrow." Noxie hesitated, but when she saw her sister moving forward, she followed. She grabbed the knife, held it tighter than she needed to. That night, none of them slept well, but something had changed. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Not safety, not yet, but the start of something dangerous, something strange, something like freedom. The girls trained every day with Carson. Lyra learned to shoot using empty cans as targets. Noxie practiced knife swings, hand grips, and silent movement. They weren't soldiers, but they weren't helpless anymore, and for the first time, they didn't feel like prey. But Carson knew peace like this couldn't last. The traders had their scent, and traders never forgot their merchandise. He had seen it before. Once someone escaped the chains, the trackers came crawling, no matter how far, no matter how well you hid, they always found a way to drag you back. Carson sat in his corner late that night, checking a rusted scanner pad. He didn't tell the girls, but a red dot blinked just outside the sector. It was tagged with a trader code. It was getting closer each hour. In the morning, he cooked. A thicker stew, more protein, more heat. Lyra smiled at the smell. Noxie ate fast, her knife always beside her. Carson said nothing until they finished. Then he looked at them both and said, "They're coming." Lyra froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Noxie's eyes narrowed. When? Soon, Carson said. Maybe a day, maybe less. He stood, walked to the supply chest, and unlocked it. "I want you to be ready," he added, pulling out 2 pulse vests. He tossed one to each girl. "Put these on." Lyra caught hers. With both hands confused, "Are we running?" Carson shook his head. "No," he said. "We make our stand here later that day." Noxie helped Carson set traps along the side tunnels, motion buzzers, static flash bombs, and gas canisters. All wired to an old trigger system Carson rebuilt with Lyra's help. "We'll stall them long enough to escape," Carson said. "But if things go bad, don't wait for me." Lyra stared at him. "You're not dying for us," she said sharply. Carson looked her in the eye. "I'm not dying," he replied. "I'm keeping a promise that night." They heard the first footstep echo, not soft, not gentle heavy, metal, full of purpose. The kind of step that said, "We own this place." Carson pressed his hand against the wall switch. The cameras flicked on, black and white. 3 shadows entered the main tunnel, 2 armed with shock rifles, 1 with a scanner pack. "That's them." Carson whispered, "Same ones from before." Noxie's grip tightened on the blade in her belt. She wanted to fight. She wanted to scream. Carson shook his head. "Wait," he said, "let the trap greet them first," as the traitor stepped into the outer hall. The floor buzzed. Then boom, a flash bomb exploded. White light and smoke filling the tunnel. The girls covered their ears. Carson smiled grimly. 1 down. The traitors didn't scream. They pushed forward, coughing but still moving. The one with the scanner waved a handheld unit near the door. "She's in there," he shouted. "The tall one's in there too." Noxie gasped. "How do they know?" Carson's face darkened. "Your ID chips," he said. "Even burnt. Even old, they ping low signals if scanned close." He slammed a panel shut. "They didn't forget you. They tracked you. Now what?" Lyra asked, heart pounding. Carson pointed to a crawl shaft. "Plan B," he said. "Out through the waste tunnel. I'll buy you time." "No," Lyra said. "We're not leaving you." But he looked at her hard. "If they get you again, they'll break you," he said. "And I can't fix that." Another boom shook the wall. The outer trap was gone. "Go," Carson barked, tossing a stun baton to Lyra. "I'll follow right after." Noxie pushed open the shaft, crawling in first. Lyra turned one last time, eyes locked on Carson. "Don't lie to me," she whispered. "I won't," he said. "Now, move." The tunnel was narrow and dark. Steam hissed through cracks, and grime coated the walls. But it was freedom. Behind them, blaster shots echoed. Carson was fighting not to win but to stall. Noxie led them forward until they hit the outer hatch. Lyra slammed the emergency lever, and the metal door hissed open. They stumbled out into the lower dump field, empty, abandoned, but free. Lyra turned to close the hatch and saw blood on the floor. Carson hadn't come through. He was still inside. Asterisk, the dump fields were quiet. Too quiet. Only the wind moved, brushing across the broken metal and cracked plastic. Lyra and Noxie stood just outside the hatch, panting, hearts pounding like drums in their chests. Behind them was the tunnel, still open, still dark, but Carson hadn't followed. And the blood trail told them why. Lyra stared at the hatch like it might open any second. Noxie tugged her sleeve, voice shaking. "We have to go," she whispered. "They'll come through." But Lyra didn't move. She looked down at her hands, still holding the stun baton Carson gave her. It felt heavier now, not like a weapon, but like a goodbye. Then the hatch began to close. Slowly, from the inside, a shadow moved behind the thick glass. And for 1 second, just when Lyra saw his face, Carson bruised, bloody but alive. He raised one hand, pressing it against the glass, and mouthed the words, "Run." The hatch sealed shut. Locking them out, locking him in. Lyra's chest ached. Noxie grabbed her hand and pulled her away. "Come on," she begged. He gave us time. They ran. through scrap piles and ruined engines, until the dump fields gave way to the lower market. Ruins an old trade zone no one used anymore. Broken neon signs flickered, casting blue and red light over cracked pavement. They hid inside an old vending stall. Dust covered the glass, and the shelves inside were empty. But it was shelter, and for now it was enough. Lyra collapsed against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Noxie sat beside her, silent neither. Of them spoke for a long time, then Lyra whispered, "Why did he stay?" Noxie didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "Because he wasn't like them." She looked down, voice trembling. He never was. The next hours were slow. The station's night cycle began, lights dimmed, temperature dropped. The girls curled under old vendor cloths and waited. For the first time in days, no one came to hurt them. No scanners, no boots. No shouting voices, only silence. It felt strange, almost fake, but it was real. Lyra woke first, blinking at the soft blue light of morning. She expected the nightmare to return: traitors, chains, Carson's blood. But instead, she saw Noxie still asleep, peaceful. A small smile touched Lyra's lips, even if just for now they were safe. Later, they found an old storage unit buried. Under the market rubble, Lyra picked the lock using tricks Carson taught her. Inside were broken crates, bent tools, and something that made her heart jump: a working terminal. Noxie powered it up while Lyra rewired the battery. The screen blinked to life, flickering with old station data. Most of it was junk price logs, camera feeds, shipment records. But one file caught Noxie's eye. It was a list long, cold, and organized. The top read, "Pending auction, unclaimed bioassets." She clicked it, and there they were: Lyra, Noxie, and dozens more, each listed with an ID number, species, weight, health condition, and bidding value. Even a note that said "resistant discipline required." Lyra stared at it, her stomach turning. "That's what we were to them," she whispered. Numbers, cargo, nothing more. But Noxie wasn't looking at herself. She scrolled farther down, eyes narrowing. Another name appeared, younger, shorter. "Familiar?" she gasped. Lyra leaned in, and her breath caught. The screen showed a file for a smaller alien girl. Species, same as theirs. Status, captured. Name, Mika, her little sister, taken months ago. Thought lost, but knows she was alive and marked for auction. In just 48 hours? Lyra's hand shook. "She's on the trader ship," she said. "They're planning to sell her." Noxie stood up, fire in her eyes. "We can't let that happen." Lyra nodded slowly. She looked down at the stun. Baton still clipped to her belt, and thought of Carson bleeding, still fighting, still keeping his promise. Now it was their turn. Not just to survive, but to fight back, to save the ones they lost, to be more than forgotten things in a dark alley. Lyra stood tall. "Let's go find her," she said. Noxie smiled for the first time in days. Together. 2 days, that's all the time they had. 48 hours before the next slave auction started on the upper decks of Deltanine Station. Lyra's little sister Mika was listed in the catalog, and if they didn't act fast, she would be gone. Forever. The girls couldn't do it alone. So Lyra made a decision that would have scared her before. She reached out to an old channel Carson once showed her, an encrypted rebel frequency buried in the old comms grid. She typed just 6 words: "Unity member down, girls need help." The response came 5 hours later, short, direct, and full of fire. "Meet at dock C-17 Sunset by nightfall." They were hiding in the shadows near the dock. Old loading bays stood dark and silent, forgotten by most, but then a ship, black, dented, and loud, dropped from the clouds like a ghost. From it stepped a woman with short silver hair and a scar across her jaw. She looked at them once, then said, "You're Carson's strays." Lyra stood tall. "We're his family," she said. The woman's face softened just a little, then, "You've earned this ride." The rebels gave them disguises, gray robes, breathing masks, and a false ID chip each. Lyra was made to look like a trader's aide. Noxie pretended to be mute. Her weapon hidden in a storage crate marked salvage. The ship docked near the auction floor the next morning. Nothing could have prepared the girls for what they saw. Hundreds of beings, young, old, broken-lined, Up in cages made of glowing red force fields, their eyes were empty, their spirits crushed. Above them floated massive holoscreens showing Price's bitter numbers. And fake health scores. Noxie clenched her fists so tight her nails dug into her palm. "This is sick?" she whispered. Lyra nodded. "Scanning every row. Mika's here," she said. "I can feel it." They moved through the crowd slowly, pretending to belong. Traders shouted. Rich buyers laughed, and somewhere an announcer called out, "Next up, young female, rare species. High milk yield, trained in obedience." Lyra felt sick. But then she saw her cage 87. Third row, near the platform, Mika, her skin pale, eyes closed. Hands wrapped around her knees, she looked smaller, thinner, but alive. Lyra stepped forward, but Noxie grabbed her arm. "Wait," she hissed. "We need the signal." Soft beep buzzed in their earpieces. The rebel ship had hacked the station. Lights, when they blinked twice, it would begin. One blink. Lyra reached under her robe. Gripping the stun baton Carson gave her, Noxie slid her knife from the crate without drawing attention. Second blink, then chaos. The lights went black for 2 seconds. When they returned, smoke filled the air. An explosion shook the rear wall. Sending buyers running, Lyra raced forward. Slamming the baton into the control pad for cage 87, the force field dropped. Mika looked up, confused, blinking tears. Lyra dropped to her knees, grabbing her. "It's me," she whispered. "It's your sister." Mika didn't even speak. She just wrapped her arms around her and cried. Noxie took down a guard charging from the side. The rebels entered from the back, weapons ready, shouting, "This is a rescue, not a robbery." Traders fled, cages cracked open, and slaves began to run. But from the center of the chaos, a tall figure stepped through the smoke, broad shoulders, sharp armor, and a voice the girls remembered well. "You, again," the trader growled. It was Varnox, the same one who had searched Carson's shelter. And now he had a shock blade in each hand. "You're worth more than your price," he sneered. "But this time, I'll end you myself." Lyra handed Mika to Noxie. "Get her to the ship," she said. Noxie didn't argue. She grabbed Mika and ran. Lyra turned to face Varnox. He lunged. Swinging both blades, she ducked, rolled, and slammed the baton into his ribs. The charge hit. Sparks flew, but he didn't go down. "You're strong for a slave," he hissed. "I'm not a slave," she growled. "Not anymore." Then a blaster bolt tore through the air and hit Varnox in the chest. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide. Behind him, smoke parted, revealing a shadowy figure limping into the light. Carson bruised, bleeding, but standing. He fired again this time into the control panel, overloading the auction system. All the cages exploded open, and sirens wailed. Carson looked at Lyra and said just 2 words. "Let's go." Asterisk, the auction house was burning. Flames danced across the ceiling, sparks raining down like falling stars. Screams echoed through the smoke-filled halls as traders fled. Cages shattered, alarms screamed, and broken chains hit. The ground like thunder. Lyra ran, breath heavy, gripping Carson's arm. He was hurt. She could feel it in his steps, the way he leaned, but he didn't stop. They moved past stunned guards. Through panicked crowds, some freed slaves followed. Others scattered in every direction, chasing freedom wherever it led. At the ship's landing zone, Noxie waited, holding Mika close under the lowered ramp. The rebel ship's engines were firing up, ready to leave. Lyra rushed up, shouting, "She's safe, we have her." Mika looked up at her sister, eyes full of fear and hope. "You came," she whispered. Lyra nodded, pulling her into a tight hug. "I told you I would." Carson stumbled behind. Hand pressed to his side, blood leaking. Between his fingers, Noxie saw him and rushed forward. "You're hurt," she said. He gave a faint smile. "I've been worse," he muttered, then collapsed. They carried him onto the ship, laying him gently on a makeshift bed in the med bay. The rebel pilot shouted from the cockpit, "We've got fighters closing in trader patrols." Lyra grabbed the nearest seat. "And strapped in? Just get us off this rock?" The ship lifted, engines roaring. Lifting them away from the fire, the cages, the screams as they rose higher. They could see the full chaos below. The auction dome had collapsed. Flames pouring out like a broken volcano. It was over. The place where they were once sold as things was gone, in the medbay. Carson's breathing slowed. Lips dry, Noxie sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "You saved us," she whispered. "Now we save you," the pilot called back. "We'll land on Crescia Independent Moon." "No slave laws," Lyra nodded. "It's time we had a real home," she said. "A place with no chains." Hours passed. The ship soared through stars. And for the first time in their lives, the girls slept without fear on Crescia 4. The rebels helped Carson into surgery. He was stable, but weak, the doctor said. "He'll make it, but he'll need time." Lyra sat beside him every day. She brought him soup, cleaned his wounds, read him old news files just to make him smile. One night he finally opened his eyes fully. "You didn't leave me," he whispered. Lyra laughed through tears. "You raised us better than that." She said, "You made us family." Outside, Mika played with Noxie in a garden. There were real trees, soft wind, and no fences. Other rescued children joined them. Their laughter echoing under the alien sun. One morning, Carson stood outside the small cabin the rebels gave them, still limping, but stronger now. He watched the 3 girls playing, and his heart ached in the best way. He never planned to become a father. But somehow, that's exactly what he had become later that night. Lyra sat with him under the stars. "I want to fight," she said, "not with weapons, but with voice truth." Carson raised an eyebrow. "You want to speak out?" She nodded. "Let people know what they did to us. Let others like us know there's still hope." Carson smiled. "Then let's build something," he said. "A home for the ones no one wants." She reached out, took his hand. "We already have." The sun rose slowly over Crescia 4. A soft orange light touched the fields, the cabin roof. And the sleeping forms inside, bird-like creatures, chirped from the trees, their wings catching the early glow. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful for girls who once knew nothing but fear. Inside the cabin, Lyra opened her eyes. She listened, waiting for footsteps, alarms, shouting, but there was nothing. Only the quiet breath of her sister, still asleep beside her, and the gentle creak of the wind moving the old wooden walls. She slipped out of bed, bare feet on cool floor panels. Carson was already outside, sitting in a chair with a steaming cup in hand. His bandages were gone, though he still walked with a cane, but his eyes were clearer than ever. Lyra stepped beside him and looked out at the green horizon. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Carson sipped. Slowly, "Nothing's ever fully over," he said. "But this is the start of something better." Behind them, Noxie stepped out, carrying a bowl of fruit. She was smiling more these days, less guarded, more alive. Mika followed, giggling as she balanced a small plant in her arms. "This one's mine," she said proudly. "I named it Leo." Carson chuckled. "You're naming plants now?" Mika nodded seriously. "Because they're alive too," she said. "And I don't want them to feel forgotten." Lyra felt her throat tighten. That word "forgotten" used to be their entire world. Now it was just a shadow behind them. Later that day, the rebels returned. They brought supplies, building tools, solar panels, clean water systems, and something else, a message. "You girls are heroes now," the silver-haired rebel captain said, "word spreading what you did." At the auction, Lyra stepped back, uncertain. "We didn't do it to be known," she said. "We just wanted to save her, and you did," the captain replied. "But now others know they can fight too." Noxie stood up, holding Mika's hand. "We're building something here," she said. "Not just for us, for everyone like us." By the next week, more arrived. Runaways, broken ones, survivors with quiet eyes and shaking hands. The girls welcomed them. No questions, no judgment. Just open arms. They built small homes beside the cabin, planted food, fixed broken tech. Mika taught the younger ones how to name plants. Lyra helped them cook, train, and feel safe again. Noxie ran security, making sure no one ever snuck up on them again. And Carson, he watched them all with pride. He had found them as lost things. In the dirt, but now they were leaders, protectors, family. One evening, as stars filled the sky, Lyra stood before the growing campfire circle. She looked at the dozens of faces, young, old, alien, and human. She raised her voice and said, "We were once nothing, no names, no clothes, no hope, but someone said 4 words, both of you, come home." She paused, eyes shining, and now we have. The fire cracked, and someone began to clap, then more than all of them. The sound rose into the sky, not just a cheer but a promise that none of them would be forgotten again, promise that this home, this family, would protect their own, always.